You are welcome to the Naija Filmmaker, a podcast about Nigerian filmmakers, their films, and how we can build a diverse and functional industry. I'm your host, Selegot. On this episode, my guest is Toluwani Obayan, a screenwriter, director, and published author. She wrote This Lady Called Life and Ponzi and also directed a silent short called Heart and Might. She hosts the Once Upon a Dreamer podcast and is the author of How to Be a Spectacular Woman. We talk about dreams, storytelling, and her experiences in the industry. If you're a new listener, you're welcome and I hope you enjoy. Hi Toluwani, you're welcome to the Naija Filmmaker.
Hi, Shella. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Toluwani Obayan. I'm a creative screenwriter, director, storyteller, author. I like to call myself a dreamer, or should I say visionary, because when you say dreamer, most people tend to think your head is in the clouds. But visionary means you see a picture and you want to go towards it, right?
Yeah.
So yes, that's who I am.
Okay. Can we start from the very beginning? When did you discover you're a creative? Because I guess you write and you also are a director. So when did all this creativity start for you?
I would say my earliest memory was when I was a child, maybe 5 years old or so, when I would negotiate with my dad, my mom, my grandparents for stories. So at least at home, every night we got a Bible story before going to bed, and my dad was an excellent storyteller. He would make us think of David and Goliath and how the stories the Israelites fought and they did all of those things, and it was really wonderful for my hungry imagination to picture all of that. But then also when we would go visiting my grandparents, especially my grandfathers, they would tell me a lot of folk tales about the tortoise and the hare and things that happened in villages, or the strong man of the village and the strong man of the town. Abara Oko, Abara Ile, or something like that. And I would negotiate for them to tell me maybe 10 of those types of stories, and they would say 10 is too much, and then they would bring it down to maybe 5, and we would go from there. So stories back to back. Before binge consumption of stories was a thing, I was already getting it through my family. Yeah. So I guess I would say from that time already, I knew I was very interested in stories, and it was very difficult for me to ever see a plain sheet of paper and not want to write something or draw something on it. I remember how many books I started that I never finished because I just wanted to create, but I didn't know what I was doing per se.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's when it started.
Okay. In an interview, I think you said you have Yoruba blood in you, you have Igbo blood. You're from different parts of Nigeria. With these stories that your grandparents were telling you, the north, the south, the east can be quite different at times, but were there similar themes in these stories that you were being told at a young age?
I can't really remember now about the theme specifically, but I do know that, yes, about that rich heritage thing, where maybe in some ways just being from, or just having so many people that I would call blood, from different parts of the country, meant that the influences rubbed off, where I'll just see stories and not necessarily think of one name from a particular tribe. You could have 5 names and I wouldn't really think that they were different languages at that time because I didn't know that they were different languages. But yeah.
All right, so when did you, kind of get into the filmmaking industry? What was your first experience?
My first contact in film, I would say, would have been before I actually started working in film. I already loved movies from when I was really young, with online stories and everything. And it was always a family pastime where we would sit together in front of the TV and watch stuff and learn, recite the lines together because we had watched it so many times. It was something we would do with my dad, my mom, and we had a lot of favorites. So already that was something. But when I got into university, by my final year, because I studied mass communication, and at that point I was thinking I would go into broadcast, be a news anchor or a reporter, one of the two. So I got to the final year and I got to 300 year mark, and we were doing some courses and there were some tasks that we were required to do, like assignments, and film production was a part of that. And I noticed, it's not like I noticed, like I remembered that this is something I love, and I actually love it more than all of this. Because apart from being in class, when I was back in hostel, I would be watching films, I would be analyzing them, I would be giving my hot takes on it.
Yeah.
But I just never linked it to a career path I could take, even though I was doing those things by the side. I was one who would edit most of my projects we were doing in class that had to be edited. Like if we did a news production, for instance, I would be one of the editors on the project because I knew how to use Adobe Premiere Pro even then, or something I learned maybe 200 So when I discovered that film was also part of this mass communication thing, it's mass medium, right, which is masses, like I can actually specialize in this instead of going through the news route that seems to me to be a bit boring because you're restricted by many rules. You can't just be too creative with your expression. I'm sure people who are in that space would disagree, but that's how it felt to me. It felt very restrictive.
Yeah.
I decided to do my final year project on film specifically. It was on the perceived influence of recurring Nollywood themes on social cultural development. So it was something that spoke to a lot of people and addressed a lot of things that people were trying to find out about film and its influence on the masses. That piqued my interest more. So I ended up doing a master's after that in film and television studies at the University of Portsmouth, England. My first degree was at Covenant University. Second was at the University of Portsmouth. And while I was there, I was introduced majorly to screenwriting. I had done writing before here and then as a mass communication student, and writing beats, headlines, news pieces. But in this case, it was writing for film. And I was a natural. It didn't feel like something I had to learn from scratch.
Yeah.
Because I had been so exposed to storytelling along the line. And I enjoyed the whole experience of it. I remember having a really great score. The script was called An African Queen. There I told the story of this Nigerian girl that meets the crown prince of England.
Yeah.
And in this whirlwind romance, and they get married, and there's a lot of backlash. I didn't know that there would be a lady of, should I say, mixed heritage getting married into the royal family one day, but that was the story I read back in 2013 or so. And the screenwriting lecturer really loved it. She was already working in Hollywood at the time, so learning from her was also something that was a rich experience.
Yeah.
Then I came back to Nigeria after that, started working at Waladina Productions as a video editor. And it was just like, this is supposed to be in the meantime. I still want to write, I want to go and direct, but I got a job as an editor, which actually did help and everything. So I've been in the film industry since, let's say, 2011, based on the research I've been doing and my master's and the jobs I've had in video editing, which ultimately led to me writing a few scripts that maybe I know now and directing my short film.
Okay. So you did mass comms, you did your masters, and then you came back and started working at Wale Adinka Productions. How was that switch, or how was that introduction into the industry? Like, what were the things you learned quickly while editing like the TV shows?
Editing for TV was interesting, especially should I say editing for drama. Because back in school, most of what I had edited maybe would have a few leads, maybe this shot and that shot, and it wasn't drama that you were trying to take close-up shots, establishment shots, and piece everything in one. It wasn't as complicated, and it wasn't as speed-driven. But when I started working with one editor, and you have episodes being churned out every week, speed was demanded. Then also speed in, not just speed in the sense of having the whole episodes being ready, but speed of cutting, because it had to be seamless.
Yeah.
And in being seamless, there could be a shot where continuity was an issue. The actor might be looking up when in the last shot they were looking down or even turning to the side, and you have to find either a way of using a cutaway at that point, or distracting with something else so it doesn't look as if there's several takes. And that for me took a little bit of time, not really that much. Maybe I think after a week of practicing there, I already got the gist of it. And the more I edited, easier it got, where I didn't, I think even when I edit now, I don't have to look at my keyboard because you already know the controls, you already know the shortcuts to everything. I just do it and get it out. So I think it was a wonderful experience, even though for someone like me who has a very low threshold for boredom, after I had gotten the hang of it, it wasn't as exciting anymore because, well, you just sit down, you're not on set per se, but you feel like you're there because you hear action, you hear, GP, can you just give me that bottle of water over there? You hear all the things that go on behind the scenes. You hear when the actors get into character. You hear when they have to retake lines. Sometimes you're editing something that you think is going well, then you just get to a point where they made a mistake and you have to change the whole thing and start again. So it could be really frustrating, but learning experience was important for me because even when I went back into scripting, I could see the edits as I would write. Like, okay, if I write it this way, how would they cut it? I can't just switch to this next thing without maybe giving something like a transition or intermission because I know it could be difficult if you're not considering that even on the scripting stage. And my hope is that every time that a director that I'm working with sees the script, they can already kind of picture the film because somehow I have added the cuts to it in my head too. So it's been really helpful. I think there's no part of film that's not worth knowing if you can.
Yeah. Okay. At what point did you, like leave your editing job, and what was that next step for you in the film industry?
It was a bit of a hard experience after. I thought I was ready. I was ready in all honesty, and I think people go through seasons where you grow. I left Welladinga in 2016, early 2016, and I left because I felt doors were opening for screenwriting opportunities. People were like seeing my work, maybe they would see short stuff I wrote and like, we want to work with you on this feature. So I had gotten like maybe 4 offers like that, and I was like, okay, based on the prices I told them and them agreeing to this, I can survive if I leave this job. I left the job. The first person I wrote for with all zeal, like, being a newbie in that space, I didn't know how things could go to the other side. First person I wrote for gave me the opportunity, we even signed the contract, blah, blah, blah. Up till today, there was never payment for that gig. There were just love stories. And this is the day that I had left my job. I left everything and I didn't really have a backup plan. But thank God everything is sorted now. It's just part of the stories you tell when you're trying to find your footing in an industry, I guess. So after that, I got a lot of situations like that where it would either be, please, can you do this thing for free, or can you just help me with this, or you do something at the offer. So very, very, very basic. And thankfully, my parents were understanding. So I had to move back home. I was staying at home. I wasn't paying rent. I think that helped. But constantly, I would say that was my hustling phase because I would never have seen myself as a hustler. But I was on the road constantly. I lived that time at urban states, but most of the work you do is in Lagos, right? Most of the people that get writing or writing services or even production consults, whatever it is, in Lagos, they're in Lagos. So I would go all the way, taking public transport, bus after bus, Marwa after Marwa, all the way to maybe Surulere or sometimes even to the island and then back. And I was that because the sun had beaten me very well that period. But even with all of that, it wasn't as if a lot was coming in, or if a lot wasn't coming in, and then at least you were seeing credits on TV, it would be a bit better. But it would be a kind of situation where you write something and you don't know what happens to it. Maybe they've taken your credits off and given it to another person. So there's nothing to even show for the work that you're doing. So that was how that season was for a bit. Until I guess my short film, Heart and Night. But the good thing about that season was I really honed in on the craft. Like I would sit down day after day, reading, studying film, watching maybe things like Hollywood Roundtable, and feeling as if I was sitting on the table with them and saying, okay, I didn't necessarily want to be there one day, but it was like if I sit with these type of people and think about film the way they think about it, maybe I'll be onto something. And it really rubbed off on me. And I remember days, and my dad came into the room and saw me. He had been watching me off and on, just studying. And he said to me, because my dad was the person who strongly believed in God and his leading, and I believe that too. He told me that, Toluwani, all these things that you're doing, one day, very soon, it would stand you out in the midst of your peers. And he said it he said it really deeply, like he got an epiphany, or God was showing him something. He said, I shouldn't worry about it. Like, look as if nothing is happening for now, but it would pay off, it would happen.
Yeah.
And the reason that still means a lot to me is because it wasn't long after that my dad passed. And it's one of the things I remember him saying that really stuck with me, that as you're pushing here and nothing seems to be showing for it, it will show one day. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that must have really been encouraging, because it can be a lonely journey, trying to make that break and get constant work.
That's true. Very true.
Okay, so like for you, what was that thing that you did that kind of changed everything for you? Like you weren't in this hustling phase again. Like what was your, would I say, big break?
I feel like my big break has happened in elephant bite sizes or something. God has been kind to me to me more than I can take per season. So it's been the kind of thing that has been coming and hasn't overwhelmed because I don't realize it's happening until it actually happens.
Yeah.
The big break in this sense was my short film Heart and Mind.
Yeah.
I was at wit's end and I didn't want to do it again. And I remember that period just like asking God for, because I was like, at this point, I've worked, I've studied, nothing is coming in. I've already come back from doing a master's. I've had a job somewhere and I left the job by myself and this is where I am at home. And I closed my eyes, like I felt tired, I wanted to stop, and I just saw this picture, this image of the bench, the lone bench. And as I saw the bench, I knew it was my story. Like, I don't know how many people listening have had experiences like this, but it's things like this that make me know that my faith in God is a real thing.
Yeah.
I saw that bench and I knew immediately that this was it. This was the answer. Because how much money did I have? I didn't have much. How many connections did I have? What was to do? I didn't really have that much going for me in that space. Plus, my parents were working, but we were not a wealthy family. And there were other things that needed to be sorted out as well. So it's not as if I could say my parents should give me this huge amount of money to go and start doing things. But they did help with it. It's not as if they didn't at all. But even what they could give at the time wasn't going to be enough to do anything elaborate.
Yeah.
But the story idea was for a single location on a bench with 3 characters where I acted too, because casting would have cost a bit more if I had to cast someone in my place. I wrote it, I directed it, I edited it, I composed the score. I did a lot of things and people make about because of like I don't want to be one man army working on this, but that's what I could have put in that season. But what God asked me that season was, what do you have in your hands? And that's all I had. So I brought it all to the table.
Yeah.
And we did that in silence because first of all, when you have a very low budget, sorting sound out can be extremely expensive. So we didn't even bother with trying to make sure everything was quiet in the environment.
Yeah.
We're just sitting in a park. No permission to use the park or no permission to drive people away or anything like that. So with what we had, we made it a silent short film.
Yeah.
With music playing first. And that's how it came about. So I did it for Cannes Film Festival, the Cannes Film Festival, but it didn't get selected, even though they gave us the reply, which they don't often do.
Yeah.
They replied saying we should try it. And that really encouraged me for them to actually give a reply, because they had said before that you don't expect any reply if you don't get chosen. So that seemed to me as if they thought this was worthy of try again, don't give up on what you're doing. And this was the debut one. But even though it was rejected by Cannes, moving forward, there were jobs I got, especially on an international scale, like the other news, because people saw samples of my work nailed by Heart and Mind with film.
Yeah.
They saw the concept, saying like, you can think like this to create a whole story dedicated to fallen heroes on a single bench with these few characters. You can do this thing called satire. We trust your creativity enough. Yeah. So I got that job where I actually became became the head writer on the show. And I was getting paid on a weekly basis in a way that I guess a lot of people in this country, even beyond the creative space, don't necessarily get paid, because it wasn't just a Nigerian initiative. It was something that an American company called PMI, Pilot Media Initiative, had collaborated with Osiwa and Channels TV to create. So they were thinking of compensation that would be sensible and honorable for creatives.
Yeah.
In that process, it's like coming from this space that there was almost nothing, to come into getting on a weekly basis a sum that was mind-blowing to me at the time. There has been growth since then, but to me, it was huge then. It's still huge to an extent for people, honestly speaking, but yeah, I mean, there's been growth. Apart from the other news, I also got accepted into a Pan-African fellowship called Akoma.
Okay.
Amplified by Akoma. Where people were from Rwanda, from Ghana, from Kenya, Nigeria, and they only selected, was it 10 people out of thousands as applicants? I was one of those. And when I joined, they told me that the reason I was taken was because they saw my short film and they were mind blown and they wanted to work with me. And that opened also international doors. Fellowship was a paid one in dollars as well. And the links were Pan-African because I have different people that I still am in communication with from all over the continent.
Yeah.
The people that started it was CNN alum. I don't know if you know Zayn Virgie and Chidera Kwesi. So even working with them also got me into spaces and rooms and conversations that I not believed could happen in such a short time.
Yeah.
Everywhere I put it, even for 5-6 years after that, it kept on giving, saying, "Oh, we saw this thing and we like this. Can we do this with you? We saw that, we liked it." So it was that little thing that was in my hand, but God used to do big things.
Okay, so like for Heart and Might, how do you come up with the idea?
Heart and Might, definitely divine inspiration. Divine inspiration that led to me being able to give commentary on something I was quite passionate about. I always wondered about fallen heroes and people fighting Boko Haram. Battling against Boko Haram has been since 2002, I think.
Yeah.
And so many lives have been lost. And it feels as if many times they're not going away. And it feels very political. Regardless of the intricacies of the war, I feel people that have given their lives for a cause that's important should not be forgotten.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to tell that story. When you tell a story from a place of love, a lot of people are able to connect because we all have people that we love, whether or not it's romantic or if it's in a familial sense. The people that when they are gone, we will definitely miss. So I said, let's put ourselves in the shoes of this lady who maybe had a bad experience with love and then finally found her true love in a person only for to be taken away through war. And I was hoping that anybody who had gone through that type of situation would know that they're seen. But apart from that, all of us that maybe go around life just happy-go-lucky, who are unbothered by other people's reality, I was hoping that we would take a minute to think about it and not be so distant and make it look as if it's none of our business that these things happen around us.
Yeah.
So that was the general essence of the story.
Okay. And you were the director, writer, you acted in it, you composed the score and edited it. For these things that you did on the film, like, did you feel prepared, or it was just something out of necessity that you had to basically rise up to the occasion?
I don't know if you can ever feel prepared enough. But like I said, when I was referring to all my dad stuff, I had been studying, I had been watching things about it, I had been putting myself in that frame of mind even before I thought I would be doing a short film.
Yeah.
I remember initially, I thought maybe I'll do a feature first.
Yeah.
And I spoke to someone in the industry who said, if you've not done a short film, a feature might be too much. So just try and see what it would be like with the shorts first. So I would say I was prepared enough. I had gone myself to the location several times with my iPad, and I would try and take shots to see what I wanted us to capture, because I would have meetings with the cinematographer to say, okay, this is how we can take this point of view and other things like that. So I was preparing myself, and I was praying a lot in that season. But then I guess it wasn't until I got to the job itself that I knew if I was prepared or not. A lot of it was, okay, today started off slow because it was the first day, but the next day we were on it. Because we had to use a lot of daylights.
Yeah.
And we're very careful to start around the same time every day. Because like I said, we didn't have a lot of money. So I don't think we used any external lights. We used a reflector and other things, right? Or should I say deflector? But we didn't use any key lights or stuff. So we're working literally with sunlight. And with sunlight measured according to the time of day, so that shots would be consistent and all of that. And so preparation was an on the go. I think for everything that has to do with film, it's not just going to be like a one-off that happens. Even in Hollywood, there are things that you have to adapt to on the go, on a set. And I think you can't be overly prepared. You just need to know that you're ready for whatever comes. And that's one of the things I learned by doing that film. Editing-wise, I was very prepared because, like I said, just before that, I had been editing non-stop. And while I had been in the productions, like months prior to that, maybe 7 months prior to that, and I still kept editing, like at home for other things, maybe little projects here and there. So I was prepared editing-wise, writing-wise. I think I was prepared, but I've grown even since then. So I was prepared enough for that.
So now let's talk about composition. Composition is a different ball game. Like, did you have a musical background? Like, how did you come up with the score for the film?
I wanted the score and not generic soundtracks like we buy, because I was trying to speak to something military. I wanted something that would be symbolic, something that would give tribute. And in the military, Eagles, I used to call people to duty. For anybody that has gone through National Youth Service Corps, you know that the beagle goes off and you're out. And that's generally how barracks and everything work. So I wanted to use that trumpet type sound. Also, I was happy to use something very subtle because, or should I say very, very minimal, because the budget, like I told you, there were budgetary constraints. And in this case, it was a friend that helped, and I just maybe gave transport to. So I didn't pay for the score. That meant also that I couldn't get a producer officially to start writing any music for me, because when it becomes something very extensive, it's almost unfair to ask people to put all of that in and you can't compensate them. So I wrote this, but the good thing is that I've always been in music. I think I didn't mention that. I didn't really mention myself as a musician when I was introducing myself, because it's not something I do professionally. Like, it's not my line of work, but it's something I love. I've been in the choir for the longest time. I've written several songs. I think I've written over 60 songs. I played the guitar enough to compose songs with it. I play the recorder quite well. I understand music. I read music. So writing the score, writing the score, it was something I hadn't done before. So, like everything else, I studied a bit, went to look through things like Hanzuna had done, noticed, learned the cues, learned the themes and the tracks that would come at different points, even though it was at a very maybe foundational level. But it was enough for me to do what I needed to do for the film. So there was a falling in love cue that started at one point and still showed up again at the end of the film. Things like that. If you listen to it, you see how some of the things are repeated with maybe added music or on a different key to show an elevation of the movement of the narrative. So that's how that went.
All right. So at this point, I'll ask, can you mention 3 random facts about yourself?
3 random facts. First, I'm a really good cook when I decide to cook.
Okay.
So, like, I don't think I'm the person that would say I'm dreaming of being in the kitchen. But then I'm really good at cooking. And I like cooking healthy things and making them delicious. So most people are surprised that, this meal is healthy, but it's so delicious. Because healthy lifestyle and living is something I'm really passionate about nowadays, especially since I've experienced sometimes the alternative of what that could be like. And I've learned that the way you eat and the way you sleep and the way you exercise has a lot to do with the quality of life you live while you're here. So it's something I'm passionate about, but also enjoying life as you're living it, so you're not eating healthy and miserable. So yes, I'm a good cook.
Okay.
Before I digress, and the cook, that's one. Secondly, okay, my mind is a very busy place. I'm quite on the outside, but very talkative on the inside. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And many times I'm quiet on the outside because I haven't finished figuring out how to narrow down everything I want to say. Three, I am an author of a book called Becoming a Spectacular Woman.
Okay.
Yes, and that was my first book. So that's another random fact.
I think having a lot of ideas and kind of being paralyzed by how many ideas you might have is a constant thing that creatives deal with. Like for you, how do you organize your thoughts and basically end up kind of executing some of those things so that you end up something comes out of it, that process?
I think I found journaling to help a lot because for me, like journaling, writing is the way I catch my thoughts. It's very therapeutic in that sense. It almost feels like I feel very light when I've written it all down on paper because I don't have to keep thinking or remembering or trying to not miss something. So I tend to journal quite a bit in different places. That's the thing. I wish everything was in one place, but it's with whatever is with me at the time that gets it. So if it's my phone, it's on my phone. If it's a notepad, it's a notepad. If it's my diary, so if it's somewhere on Google Docs when I'm with the laptop. So I write down or even record but then keep it. So I have things everywhere. I think it really does help because there are times when I've left it for years and then I come back and I'm like, oh wow, this could work.
Yeah.
For instance, in one of the films I did, Ponzi, that's on Amazon Prime right now. My brother and I started off just remembering a place we had lived during our NYC days and remembering people on that street and thinking, what if we made it into a film about Ponzi, the Ponzi scheme and someone coming to deceive people? Because we had a lot of people who were involved in betting and things on that street.
Yeah.
And it took like maybe 5 years or so before there was any need for that idea to be made into a film.
Yeah.
So it does help to document things.
Okay. What did you do in NYC? I'm curious.
I did in
where?
Lagos State.
Okay. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. All right. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about you're the writer for This Lady Called Life and Ponzi, and also Finding Diana, one of the writers.
Yes.
It's one thing to write. It's one thing to write short films, and then it's one thing for what you have written to be produced into a film. Two of these films that I've mentioned were directed by Kaede. So for you, like, what was that journey to kind of, would I say, showing your script to people and then also kind of finding like this special collaboration with other people that, can help the idea get made? What was that journey for you? Building up to Ponzi and This Lady Called Life.
Okay. This Lady Called Life, I met Kaede he was one of the editors at Wale Adinga production. But I was there. That's how we met. We became friends then. And I think our first ever, I think it wasn't his first ever short, but it was my first ever short, not in the directorial role, but as a writer, was the film we called In Time. And we submitted it for 48-hour film challenge, meaning we just wrote it in 6 hours and we tried to start making the film immediately or rush.
Yeah.
And we made it to the final of the challenge. And I remember we didn't win because we got to the voting stage and we didn't get enough people to vote for us, but we had a fighting chance. So after that, I think I already left Wale Adinga Productions maybe a year before I left. I also left eventually, but we stayed in touch off and on. And when he was ready to do This Lady Called Life, it wasn't called that at the time initially, but he had this he wanted to do about a lady who cooked.
Yeah.
We started talking about it. We didn't really move on with it at that point. I guess everybody just had to. I was busy at the other news. He was busy doing something else. I don't think he had left his job at the time, so he was directing, finding ways just to balance everything at the same time. Then a year after that, he reached out again, saying he really wanted to do this. And he came to me with like some points of ideas he was having, especially the fact that she was a cook and there would be a competition. And from that point, he wanted it to be a story. He had the title then, This Lady Called Life. And just from the title, I knew that we would have to take on life. It couldn't just be a thing where the movie would overshadow aspects of real life and relationships and other things like that. So my focus was to get it to the point where everything that happened within the film would sort of be a metaphor for life, just as the character was a metaphor for life and things that can happen in life and positions and choices we make and all of that. So the collaboration happened because we had worked together when we were while I did productions. I had kept in touch, and I always knew that he wanted us to work together on a feature film. So he reached out, we did it, and it turned out, I think it turned out really well. Thank God, even the reception of it eventually, something that people still talk about up till today and have a lot of emotional moments. A lot of people have cried, they shared it with their families. They felt like we told their own stories, and that's a huge win for me, because if a story doesn't connect, even if it makes all the money in the world, it's not enough for me. I think stories are supposed to reach people's hearts. Same for Ponzi. Ponzi was not just Coyote, though. It was Coyote and Vincent Okonkwo, who was the executive producer. Coyote was the director on it. So it was more of me working with Mr. Vincent for the first time. On feature level, second time. And they liked our story idea, because this one was an original idea from us. Being shared with them. They liked the idea, and I wrote the script for it. And if you see the credits, my brother's name is also in the credits for story, because it was both of us conceptualized it. So that's what the process was like. I guess writing a feature is a bit different. It's very different from writing a short, because in short, you get to contain everything you're trying to say in fewer pages, fewer words. With a feature, you have to keep the interest for a long enough period of time. So it's almost as if it's many shots and so many scenes and all of that. And it takes a lot of stamina. I don't like, the part of the writing I don't like is when the ideas are not flowing in a strong enough way for me to finish. Because I really want to get to the end of it to be able to look at the whole film and say, okay, it's time to do the second draft. But writing that first draft can be very difficult, because you write the first page and like, is this really working? Why is this happening? How would this character react this way? I'm not feeling it yet. And you know that if you lose people maybe in the first 10 pages, they're not going to watch the rest of the film. Or if in the middle it drops, what's the point of all the hype at the beginning of the film? So there's just a lot of pressure to keep the momentum going when you're writing a full-length feature that could go on for 2 hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes, and against the short film that people can say, even if it's dry, let me watch 5 minutes. It's just 5 minutes, right? People won't give 2 hours if it's not going to hold them. So,
Okay. So what's your process of, writing a feature, and how have you adapted that process to how Nollywood producers work? What's your ideal process?
My ideal process overall would give me enough time. Typing like I'm a very fast typer. I don't have to look at my keyboard to type. It's just, I guess if you've been writing for a while, you already know everything is. You need to get things done. But I feel like many stories that come out that are flat, it's not because they didn't have the potential to be epic, because they were rushed. And ideas need time to bake. If we're going to have the richness of nuance and layers and the thematic expression done correctly, it needs time. It needs not just time from the screenwriter, it needs time from people who are even giving feedback, not just saying, oh, this one doesn't work and that doesn't work, or this one will not sell. But things like, okay, asking the right questions. What's in the psyche of this character? I don't feel what the character did at the end is in line with who the character was introduced to be. Things on a deeper level that make us really think, so that even when criticisms are coming for work, because critics are allowed to do their thing and help everybody stay on the best levels for the quality that we bring to the table. But even when critics are doing their thing, like, it's not just low-hanging fruits that they get to use to critique a film. They have to go deeper into the concept, so they can really challenge the craft and make it better, but not just bash lazy work. Because the truth of the matter is that to do any film in Nollywood, it's not even lazy. You can't be lazy on this side of the continent of the globe to make a film. We don't have enough money to be lazy. see people stressed out, they're not sleeping, they're on caffeine, working hard, working back to back, set to set. But like, if we're ready to put in all that work and all that stress, can we calm down a bit to get the story done? So yes, I would say my process is don't rush me. And most of the time nowadays, people that work with me come to me with stories ahead of time because they know I like to take my time. I can't take my time the way a Hollywood screenwriter would, because they get 6 months, sometimes a year. That's not going to happen here. Right now, when I ask for 6, it's already like, what? You're asking us for 6 weeks? So that's what I ask for here. And in the process of that, I start with outlining. I outline, okay, this is what I want to happen here. So I can sort of see in a miniature way of them. I feel, okay, I like what it looks like. From there, I start with just writing. Sometimes I plot out my scenes in almost like storyboard format. So I can still keep my eyes on it. Sometimes I go away from it for a time just so that I can critique it from a distance and, okay, this isn't working, that's working. Because when you try and, like I said, in rushing through, you miss a lot of things. You miss a lot of even things on an analytical level. You miss out on knowing the motivations and wants and needs of characters, because you can go into a story thinking this is what your character wants or needs. Then as you write, you learn more. It's like the characters in the story begin to school you, saying, actually, this is not what I need. Based on everything that's here, this is actually what would fulfill me the most. Then you go back and you rework it. And that happened a lot with something like This Lady Called Life. Because in This Lady Called Life, I had originally intended for the woman to be her stepmother, not her mother.
Okay.
And I remember that period I said about everything. I pray a lot about my work. I don't call God out of anything. And it felt as if God was putting in my heart, what you're trying to go for here, she should be the mother and not the stepmother. And it opened a whole new line of thinking, because what would cause a mother to treat her own daughter in this despicable way? Could it be trauma from the past? Could it be a self-disgust that she already has for herself before her daughter came into the picture? It became a much more compelling journey. But everybody can understand, if it's not your child, you can be selfish, you only love your child. But then when it's a case of a mother treating her own child that way because she hates something in herself and she has her own shame that she's transferring to her child. So it made the story much deeper. And once that happened, everything just began to click. I could see that the father was the one who was the stepfather, but he was the one who was loving. So Rose was a story that seemed linear and simple, all of a sudden had elements that would make us question why people do what they do and how we react to those things too. And those things happen with time. You can't rush it. You can't rush the process of making a case for every decision you make in a script. With Ponzi, I didn't have as much time, and that wasn't really on the producers and the director. It was more because that period enters had happened. And I was not in a mental space to write anything that was funny. So I needed an extension for that project. It ended up being, and I had to meet up during that extension because they needed to go on sets. And they were very gracious. They understood that most people were not feeling okay after. I was one of the people that went to protest. Thankfully, I wasn't there on the day that shootings happened. But hearing gunshots from my house meant that it was very close. It was very real. I even knew someone who was there who thankfully escaped before any bullets touched him. So that whole trauma of the event meant that I had to take a break, but we still had to get back to work. When I look back at Ponzi nowadays, a lot of people love the film. I think it was still brilliantly done. Many times I look at it and I really respect the directorial work that Kayode did on it, because blocking a film like that was really difficult. Where I wrote it, a lot of things would be happening at the same time. In the background, this character is this and that, and he was able to capture that, and I saw how much hard work within the time limitations and budgetary constraints they had, he would have been to pull that off, but he pulled it off. So a lot of respect for his work. But if there was more time on Ponzi, there are a lot of things I would have either taken out, be written in a certain way. But it's out there, so it has its own life now.
Okay. So, you talked about time being one of the things that is needed for a very good script. What other things do you think picking from the title of your book, What are some of the things that will make a spectacular writer?
Nice one. I think humility to the process,
Okay.
because for every project you take on, you really don't know. You may have gotten an award for something before, but every story is new. The characters are new. The world is new. So if you don't come into that world with childlike wonder, you would end up maybe remixing things you've written in old places, feeling you're familiar with what you're not familiar with. You need to be ready to be surprised and learn. When I talk about learning from characters, people think I'm going closer to craziness. But it's not crazy to pay attention and say, okay, this might be a space I'm not familiar with. That humility means also if it's not something you're familiar with, if it's not a terrain you're familiar with, for instance, I'm not a scientist and I'm meant to write a character that's a scientist on the brink of an invention.
Yeah.
I have to go and study that. I have to go and maybe learn and find out from people in that field. Watch as many documentaries as I can so I can almost get into the psyche of the person who thinks like a scientist. And then in the process of that, do justice to the character, to the character's motivations, to the character's world. But if I don't come with that humility, I would just say, I've seen them now. From afar, isn't this what scientists do? Isn't that how to do? I just write something that doesn't resonate and is not organic. So I would say humility. I would also say curiosity. I think humility and curiosity come hand in hand with that.
Yeah.
I would say also honing the craft. I feel like I'm personally in a process where I'm not taking on as much projects because I need to learn more.
Yeah.
I think it gets to a point where you feel like you know all the tools in your arsenal and you need to add more. You need to update this thing. And I've been feeling that way. So regardless of how many people are celebrating my work and saying, oh, you're one of the people who look up to in the industry and things, I'm always grateful for that. I'm grateful for how far God has brought me. But I know that in creativity, there really isn't an end. I know I don't know all that there is to know. So I think it's necessary for that hunger to remain.
Yeah.
If you want to be spectacular in how you create, the things you would get as inspiration from a child. A child could ask you a question, and then you start wandering in that direction, like, why couldn't this be in form of a story? Just get ideas popping up from everywhere. Travel the world, watch people, ask questions, listen. Yes, but never stop listening. I think that's a huge thing. You keep getting better, right? Practice, critique yourself. Have a group of friends who can give you really honest feedback, but are not mean spirited. Because a mean spirited person will break you down. But someone who can really say, okay, I see what you're trying to do here, so this part lost me. How about we do this, or maybe make this stronger? And the person really is in it to encourage you. And I'm grateful for people that I have in my life that do that.
Yeah.
It really does help my work.
All right. So now let's move to your book. You said you have started a lot of books, but How to Be a Spectacular Woman is the one that made it manuscript and was published. So it seems like this book came before even you writing This Lady Called Life and Ponzi.
Yeah. Yes, it did.
Yeah. So yeah, talk us through why this particular book was one that made it all the way to being an actual book.
Okay. First of all, the other books that didn't make it were written when I was like maybe 5, 6.
Okay.
So there was no story really going on. I would just have an idea and think my idea could carry through, but then the idea would lose steam halfway and then I would stop, not know where I was going. But over time, I had gotten to learn how to complete things, have a beginning, a middle, and an end, have an outline to break down your ideas. You don't have to do everything one breath. So I guess that helps over the years. But Becoming a Spectacular Woman is a memoir of sorts, and it's a lot about my walk with God and sharing hopes that people can come into a space where they know that they're spectacular too, as seen by God. It was something I held off on for almost a year plus before writing because I didn't feel at the time that I was qualified to tell anybody about becoming spectacular. I knew the things I was going through, and I didn't really feel super spectacular myself at the time. Writing it and reinforcing truths I had seen in God's word, things He had told me personally, regardless about how different things in life had been discouraging. writing was very therapeutic for me. I think I was the first person to enjoy the fruits of it. I put a lot of music in the book too, songs that people could listen to as they were reading the chapters.
Yeah.
And with very little marketing, the book broke even really quickly. I was very grateful for that because I used my money from the other news, like I saved money aside from there and put it down into publishing, so it was self-published. And a lot of people got it, and up till today, a lot of them still read it every now and again. They tell me that once in a while they just go back to it anytime things are looking difficult or they're feeling discouraged and they just want to remember this is who they are. They read the book again. The process of writing it was very simple, an outline. I sat down, wrote everything in my home office. And it wasn't really a home office, my table in my room, yes, because then I didn't have a home office. I wrote everything on the table in my room. I just sat down prayerfully writing. And thankfully then my parents were still here. They read the drafts and they loved it. It was a small book. It wasn't overly ambitious. It was a small enough book, I think maybe 70-something pages. But I felt it was a very honest work and I was very vulnerable in it, sharing a lot of things without considering shame, because I feel it's as we share vulnerability and ensures that other people are also given the license to be freed.
Yeah.
So that was how the book was written.
Okay. And I mean, you left spaces for people to kind of journal as they read the book, and then it also had this music feature. Why were those elements important for this book?
Like I said earlier, I journal a lot, and I know how journaling can help people process their thoughts. I didn't want it to be just this kind of thing that people read and they just go about their business after and it doesn't really stay. You just know, I heard something about this thing one day, but what does it mean to me? You don't know yet because you've not internalized it. I wanted that to be that meditative element of the book. I've listened to this song, I've let it wash over me, I've worshipped God, and now I'm writing about my own personal experiences, not just what Toluwani is sharing in the book about what she went through, but what I'm going through. So it stops just being my story. It becomes your story. So I wanted it to be interactive in that sense. And what more can you really do to make a book interactive? Because once it's with the reader, it's there. You can't talk again, right? So I wanted it to be something that would feel very interactive and memorable.
Okay. And are there still copies available for purchase?
Yes, there are copies there's some copies at Roving Heights. You can get copies on Amazon as well. I think Okada Books has copies and BAM Books has copies. So it's available in several places, both nationally and internationally.
Okay. So at its core, what kind of stories do you like to tell? Like if they just left you to write stories, what are those kind of stories you love to tell?
I think I love telling stories about love, but not just love in a romantic sense, about beautiful community where people grow into wanting the best for each other. So even if the person starts out being an Ebenezer Scrooge at the beginning, I will just always want that character to become someone who's loving at the end, because I feel like love makes the world a better place. And the world doesn't have to be stated in. There's so much pain.
Yeah.
In this world, there's so much division. And I don't like it. And I feel the thing I can do about it is tell stories that inspire people to be better. And inspire the world to be better. If you remember the project I did in university, perceived influence of Nollywood themes on social cultural development. I hope that the films I make can speak to social cultural development, because many times we think that as long as the economy is fine and we have enough money, we're not corrupt and things like that, the world would be better. Yes, it would be better, but the way people get to the point of caring enough about not being corrupt and balancing things in an economy is because they already have a heart that considers others. And you can't force that to be the case from the top down. It has to be something that starts intrinsically. And I feel stories are very powerful in doing that.
Yeah. So
stories that inspire change, social impact stories for sure. In creative ways where you don't realize that I'm doing it. Like, because if not, it's not entertaining anymore. Yeah. So I want people to really enjoy the film for sure. I don't want it to be like we came from watch a sermon. I want you to enjoy the film, but then also go away with that desire, that motivation, inspiration, not by force, but like I'm excited to do good. I'm excited to choose the right thing. I feel good about this because you've seen how it can pan out.
Okay. Your university dissertation topic was recurring themes of Nollywood on social cultural development. There has been, would I say yearning, but there has been an interest in, kind of gritty crime stories in Nigeria. And you could also say that sometimes the society kind of feeds what creatives focus on, and sometimes the creatives that determine how society kind of evolves in that sense. What do you think the prevalence of these kind of stories say about the current society, the current Nigeria that we live in?
I'm not sure if they are necessarily speaking to the current, because these things have been happening for a while. But I just feel that maybe these are stories that are also taking the interest of people, not just in Nigeria, but world over. We've seen stories like City of God. I don't know if you're familiar with City of God, and how it garnered so much acclaim world over, even with the little they had to make it, and with the first-time actors and all of that. It was a brilliantly done film, even though it was gory and all of that.
Yeah.
So I feel in many ways when we tend to see stories told in other parts of the world where before we thought we could only use maybe Nollywood themes or traditional Nollywood themes, I think other parts of the world are showing that anything can be an amazing story to tell. And most people would want to watch films that have action and have high stakes. So stories that also deal with the violence in our cities, the stories that you can be sure would get people to watch them, and also speak truth to power in several ways. So I think they are almost like epic ways of blockbuster ways to touch on very important topics at the same time. It's not too difficult to feel entertainment with the story on that level, especially since films are things people watch for escapism or for entertainment and have a good time. And most people can't go to the streets when real gangs are fighting. So you just stay somewhere else. But if you can watch it on a movie, watch it in a movie, you can enjoy the process and distance yourself from it at the same time. Yeah. But I'm not sure. I'm not even sure I've answered this so thoroughly, but I'm still not sure that it speaks generally to everything in society, because the Nigerian society is quite nuanced, where people of how many now? Are we over 150 million or 100? Are we 200 million?
More than 200 at this point.
Right? So we're so, Nigeria is very diverse. So even as the gangs stuff is happening, another film could focus on weddings and how the wedding industry is turning into something else, or people in churches or in mosques or wherever it is. Like, there's so many angles you can take and it still reflects Nigerian society and the social cultural issues.
Okay, so are you a member of the Screenwriters Guild of Nigeria?
I'm not.
What will make it attractive to you to join?
If I was really assured that, maybe I shouldn't say assured, because maybe I haven't tried enough to join it before I say that. But I feel like a guild should really protect the interests of screenwriters. I like what Writers Guild is doing in the US, where when it looks as if the people within the guild are not getting the fair compensation or fair treatment, they take a stand that's reasonable. And then they're ready to say, okay, we will not even do anything, and we will not get paid this period. So if you don't want to give into our demands. I haven't seen us take strong stands like that, because many times I still see myself having to insist on things within spaces where I work, that if it's not done this way, I can't continue working on this project. Many times on many projects, I've seen that writers don't get credit. You just be wondering, who wrote this? I like this one. Who wrote it? You go everywhere. You can't see, even on the end credits, there's nothing there. On the captions, on Instagram, Twitter, you see everything about everybody that was on set. You see the cast. Who was the writer? Things like that. If we have a guild, that should be like front and center. Compensation, there should be a level of a standard. There are people I still know who get amounts of pay that's it would hurt when you think of it because there's no one to stand up for them in that way. Sometimes it's the first timer thing and you can't do anything about it. It's your first time, you just want to get your first credit. It's fine.
Yeah.
But it should not be a generic thing. People that have written works and who have credits out there still have to struggle when they're doing work that could garner millions and millions and get sold on Amazon Prime or Netflix and other spaces where it feels as if only you maybe at times get to really enjoy the benefits of the rich stories that we all are creating. Yeah, so I think we can be doing better in the guild. So in my own mind, it's like I wouldn't mind being a part of it, but I really haven't seen an incentive that's strong enough to pull me in. Maybe I've not done enough research, so I could be wrong on some levels. But now that you asked, I think I'll look into it again and see if these are even conversations that can be had, because we really need that. I think every arm of production needs a guild looking out for them, so things can be standardized.
Okay. And like, what do you think because the Writers Guild of America started somewhere, and they have garnered so much influence that they can do what they are doing today. But like, what smaller battles can, whether it is the Screenwriters Guild of Nigeria or guilds in Nigeria, can start fighting in order to, would I say, protect their members?
I would say start with the credits first. But I think that's small enough. It's not about money yet. Just give people their credits, because when people can say, okay, I worked on this and that, it gives them more opportunity and leverage to leverage on and say, okay, yeah, it's like a CV. When you have to start explaining that I wrote this story, see evidence, and you can't just show it in credits. It's a long battle compared to just saying, see my name in the credits. It's very easy. So yeah, let's start with credits first. Let people get recognized for the work that they do.
Okay. And then how do you think like screenwriters can put themselves out there so their scripts can get commissioned, like can get, made into film? So how can they, from their rooms where they create these stories, how can they get it out there?
I would say, first of all, many times a lot of people have reached out to me saying they want me to look at their story because they want to make this into a film. And at first, I started out being enthusiastic to look at stories because why not? But then most times people just assume that you sit down and write something and it's ready for the screen. I would say that people should first of all focus on honing that craft. If it means doing it through a short film first, where you can, and be honest with yourself. Because it's hard for us to be honest with ourselves as human beings. Be honest with yourself. Is this work good enough? If someone really wants to shoot it, would you want someone who needs to make this because they're empathetic towards your struggle, or would it be because it's a film that's strong enough to be made? Once we're at the level where we're confident in the crafting, and not just because we're being biased to our own giftings, but because we've practiced and we've put in the work and taken all the feedback. If you can't get anybody to make your film, do something yourself too. Like I said again, in the short, at least that's what I did, even though I had known Kyrie before at What I Did in Productions. By the time I was doing my film Heart and Light, he hadn't done feature film yet, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even as if someone I had known was now going to come and work with me on a feature film, because he was also in the process of building his own portfolio. So many times you have to be the one to say, okay, this is something I can do, and I'm willing to take a chance on myself. I will get a few of my friends who can help out. Let's put this out. Let's submit it to festivals. Many times, if it's done well enough, there will be a callback from at least one festival. When people see that you've done something that has gotten festival recognition, there's now a credibility. They're not going all out to take a risk. Because another thing is, in as much as producers and filmmakers want to work with you, it's not as easy unless the person is really, really trained with scripts, for instance. It's not as easy to read a screenplay and be able to visualize it as a film immediately. So having something that they can reference that's already filmic, that speaks to something you've created, does help a lot. Having credits out there helps a lot, because they can watch your work and say, okay, if what you wrote played out this way on screen, I can use those eyes to read this thing I'm saying, even though I might not be the most visual person, because maybe if the person is more technical and not the director who sees everything visually. They're just reading words maybe and not being able to appreciate all of the ideas you have for the story. So it's better you have a proof of concept. That's some of what I'm saying. I use that to pitch yourself.
Okay. What was that one movie or TV series that if you were stuck on an island, and you only had that one thing to watch, which one would you choose? TV, show, or movie?
For movie, that's a really hard one. Because there's so many. I can't even. There's so many. In animation, there's also. I'm thinking right now. I might just do my big fat Greek wedding.
Okay.
I don't know. Like it's not like maybe I like today because it's one of. I've been looking at the script again and trying to like. I like so many elements of it, and I wanted to figure it out on a more technical level. So in this season, because it just has a lot of fun elements, it has everything in it. It has meaning, but it's not super heavy, and you can feel that you're surrounded by a lot of people by watching a film that has all of that family and community. So I'm not saying it's the only amazing film in the world. There are other ones that might be more critically acclaimed than it. But on an island, when you're alone, you need people, right? I would watch that. Then for TV, maybe FBI. People from production. I just like it. It's always interesting. Every episode, you want to know what happens next, and it's lively. I always enjoy watching that. It's something which you get tired of after a while. But this one, it's not really about just the characters that you love. It's about new people coming in every episode with new crimes to solve.
Yeah. So. Okay. So you have a podcast called Once Upon a Dream.
Once Upon a Dreamer.
Oh, Once Upon a Dreamer. I mean, I love it. I'm currently in episode 5.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah. So how would you define a dream? Or as you said, a vision. Yeah. How do you define it?
A dream. I would even still say dream, but just like vision makes it quicker, so you don't have to explain too much. I would say a dream is that thing that beyond even yourself, God has placed in your heart that God like something that keeps drawing you to live. You feel you're here for that reason. You feel like once you've done that thing, you can leave this earth satisfied because you fulfilled your purpose.
Yeah.
So it's not always super tangible, but it can be a blurred thing that you just know that one day this is what I would do, that I would impact humanity and the world would be better because I existed.
Yeah.
So I think that's what a dream to me is for the most part. It's not just, oh, I like actors and I want to be an actress or an actor. It has to be more than just what people influence you to do. It has to be something that even if nobody was on your side, if everybody was against you, saying that this won't work, you'd be willing to go at it with your inner witness and with God by your side. That's the dream.
Okay. So, how do you think Nigerian filmmakers can get back to dreaming? We could say that, Nigerian filmmakers are always on set. They close late. So even they sleep that they are sleeping, they don't get to settle in and dream very well. And even when they finish from set, they are hustling for their next, production. So there isn't that time to kind of sit back and, would I say daydream, dream or whatever. But and I mean, we could say that maybe sometimes it reflects in the work that is produced. So how can filmmakers get back to dreaming and just being open to possibilities?
I can say the how, but I don't know if it's feasible for most people because they need to earn, right? I would say the how is take a break. Just take a break every now and again. Step away from it. Do something else. Experience other parts of life and other people. Go on budget if you can afford it, because burnout is a real thing. You back to back, you stop being creative. No matter how hard you're trying to push yourself, your body needs rest. You don't know it, like I said before, you don't know everything about everything. Everything is not film. Film is not what makes the world go around. So if you experience things like food, if you go to a restaurant, go on a food tasting tour, maybe even if you want to keep filming, carry a documentary crew and record everything you do on your journey if that has to be it. But step away. That's just what I'm saying. Because dreams are inspired, right? not just from what you think you have in your head, but from things you don't even know about the world yet. You can smell a meal that takes you back, like in Ratatouille. Am I pronouncing it well?
Yeah, I think so.
That takes you back to your childhood and makes you feel like home. When you're on this trip, you can see someone that tells you something. You never know where inspiration is going to come from. You don't know where you're going to be refreshed again and inspired to do what you love and tell stories you've never told before because maybe you had never seen that angle of life. Read, just live. I think that's the best way to put it. Live.
Yeah.
Don't let this thing that we call a gift or an opportunity or a privilege, this filmmaking, don't let it become your prison. Live free. Because we built, do you know how this thing happens where you say you're doing the thing you love, but gradually you don't realize that you're building brick after brick before you look up, can't see where you're going to get out of it. You're trapped inside, and there's nothing else you can see but film and writing and everything, but nothing else is coming in. No new inspiration, no nothing. You don't see the sky anymore because you didn't step out. So like, don't let it trap you. That's just some of that.
Okay. So I mean, what inspires you? To wake up every morning, write better stories, be a better person.
The Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm not always a better person. He's the one that helps me. There are just times when I'm not inspired to write stories every day. The times I don't want to do any of it. The times that maybe a project I'm on has annoyed me, and I'm like, what's the point of this work I'm doing? If people even get to the point, if people even appreciate it, they're just moments that you go through, like low points, and you just maybe want to do something else. Maybe I should just have a regular day job because then I won't be thinking of being creative 24/7 to make a living, right? So I would say it's definitely God, because there are times when I've almost walked away and God has brought me back saying it's something He wants me to do, that there's a reason I'm here and He has something for me to say. To be a better person in that way, it's only God, because there are times that, of course, like I think every human being, I want to do something that's about me and for me. I'm thinking of other people in the process, and God will convict my heart. Say that's not how to live. That's not how to do it. Like, the world doesn't move forward if everybody's thinking of just their thing and how to move forward. There are times it's even tempting for you to say, I will do what will get me ahead, because you see people taking advantage of you, and you're just like, okay, if that's how it is, maybe I'll just do it myself too. I'll just think about me and won't consider them. And before I can ever get to the point of that, He always checks me. Says, regardless of how painful it is, no level of praise and acclaim and celebration is worth you taking advantage of your fellow man.
Yeah.
So even if it means the journey is slower sometimes, or whatever, like the things that are not worth it to me, even if it feels like that, God shows me that there's still people who care about doing the right thing, and we all encourage each other. So if there's anything, I would say God and the people He's blessed me with.
Okay. So should we be expecting to get back into the director's chair anytime soon?
God willing. God willing.
Okay.
Yeah. So
can't wait.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it too.
Nice. So Nollywood is a growing industry, getting recognition here and there. But internally, like, there are a lot of things we could be doing better. For you, what is that thing you think we should prioritize in improving?
I'm going to go again. Storytelling. Okay, I'll start with storytelling, actually. Maybe I won't say storytelling. I would say being patient with mastering our crafts on every level.
Yeah.
No shortcuts. I know based on our budgetary constraints, it means that many times we're just trying to do what we can do to finish the film in 10 days or 5 days if possible, But that tends to show because we do one shot and we're like, okay, we're doing. Even if it's not exactly what we're trying to get, we just make do with what we have. It's a lot of managing here and there. Even on projects that have bigger budgets, it's still something similar.
Yeah.
We don't have studio spaces. Like, we've not built studios that we could stay away from the general public. So you're trying to shoot somewhere, next thing a generator comes on in the next house, sound is affected. And it's out of your control, because even when there's money, we don't have the what you call it, the infrastructure within the industry to carry the quality we're trying to reach. And now that we're getting to a global scale and the whole world is getting to watch our films, I feel it's time for us to also build on that level where film people can just say, okay, they want to shoot something. Can I rent out this sound studio for the day? Because I want to make something that I won't have to start fixing in post every 5 seconds for sound.
Yeah.
So I feel taking time to hone the craft and everything that would support the execution of crafting on an excellent level. If Nollywood steps back for a bit, or even if we don't step back, but we have people who rise up that say, okay, all they want to do is cover that space of things. And maybe there's a level of sponsorship in a way that is not beyond what filmmakers can afford to be a part of, even initially. I think it could really help things, because now that we are getting to this global playing field, it's time to also look inwards and say, okay, not just that we're excited that we've gotten there, how can we improve so people don't say things like, this is an amazing film for a Nigerian film or for Nigeria. We keep talking about our limitations for 20 years. I think we have a chance now to not just look at these limitations as things that will always be, but things that could challenge us to improve upon and grow.
Okay. What are you working on? Should we expect a new season of your podcast, a new project, a new book?
Yes, currently season 3 of Once Upon a Dreamer is live. At least episode 1 is live, and there'll be more episodes in the coming weeks. Apart from that, there are a few projects I've worked on already that should be out this year. I don't know when exactly, because once I've handed them in, it's not in my hands anymore. But there's a sequel for This Lady Called Life coming out.
Okay.
There's another film I worked on, which will be out soon. There might be about 3 or 4, I'm not sure right now.
Nice.
Coming out this year, screenwriting project. Then also directing. Might not be this year, might be next year, but I'll keep everyone posted on the details of that. I'm not sure when next I'll be writing a book. So, but in this current season, like I told you, I'm going back to studying and growing again, so that more things I put out will be in a space that I can be very proud of too. Not just have people being proud of it, feeling like it could be better.
Okay. And, when these updates are ready, where can people go to, find out?
Yes, I do, definitely. My social media at Toluwani Obayan on Instagram and Twitter. But then my websites, I guess, get the updates before anyone else, toluwaniobayan.com.
Okay. Thanks, Toluwani, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Ede. It's been an amazing conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot. We have come to the end of this episode. Remember to rate and review the podcast. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Selegol Film, and the podcast at the Naija Film Pod to share your feedback. You can now support the podcast by visiting the website to donate. See you on the next episode. Have a good one.